Okay, perfect. It seems like many people have already seen the first part, so that's great. If you haven't seen the first part, that's not a problem. You can always find it on our website in case the second part is entertaining and interesting. You can always watch the first part as well. Okay, so I think everybody's here now. Again, my name is Marina. I'm one of the solution architects at Dundas, and I'm here to lead you through this webinar where I'm going to teach you cool and valuable BI things you can do in Dundas BI. Before we get started, I want to say a couple of things about Dundas as a company. So we've been in the visualization business for over 25 years. We actually started with visualization components, which we did so well with that Microsoft decided to buy those components from us in 2007. Ever since then, we have worked more towards full end-to-end BI platforms, and the product we're going to use today in our webinar is called Dundas BI and was released in 2014. Across the company and also across the different products, our motto is always to make 80% of the use cases easy, but then still all of the rest possible. So that is also shown throughout the webinar. You'll see that most of the features I'm going to show you are just a couple of clicks away, where others will be able through a little bit of scripting using our open APIs. And throughout the webinar, you also have the option to ask questions. So don't be shy. If you have any questions coming up, feel free to submit them. We will answer questions as we go. But we also have a time at the end dedicated to answer any kind of questions you might have coming up. This here is just to show you that Dundas BI is a full end-to-end platform, which means that it gives you everything you need, starting from administration, where you can manage your users, a data preparation layer that allows you to connect to your data sources and transform them, an analytics layer, as well as data presentation, where you can create all those good-looking dashboards, scorecards, and reports. And we also come with a collaboration layer. And we're going to touch base on all of those different areas throughout the webinar, as well as on our extensibility with the open APIs. So let's get started then. This here's the agenda for today. So we'll see that we can cover the data preparation. We're going to cover some parts of the analysis as well as visualization at the administration. The first thing we're going to look at is something that I think is very handy. It shows you how to limit the data source by user. So many of you that are familiar with the application are probably going to already do that, maybe in the data cube. However, there's an easy option to do that also from the data connector right away. And the way you would do that is, if I quickly bring up my Explorer panel here on the right side, I already have a couple of data connectors set up. So you can see that here, my AdventureWorks data connector, if I expand that, it has all the different data within my company available here. So you can see things like human resource information, information about the different clients that I have, even down to production here. So especially for human resource information, I might not want to share that with everybody. I might just want to share that with people from the human resource department. And the way you would set that up, let's say we have a look at our employee table here. I can right-click on this table, and then I can bring up the properties. From the properties, I have the option here to set up the security on a table level already, and that works across different data sources. So if we have a look at the security option right now, everybody can see this table, which I might not want because this is specific information about my employees. So I can decide that I'm now going to remove the everyone group from here. So now I can only see it, and then I can add other users in groups. So let's quickly have a look. In this case, I just want to share this specific table with my human resource department. So I'm going to select this. I can submit from here, and then for the human resource department, I can decide how they can interact with this specific table. So do I give them full control, or maybe just the ability to, create metric sets and dashboards based on that? So this is how you can use the data connector security options to already limit the number of tables that users can see without going to the data cube for that. Something else I wanted to show you is how you can actually use dimensions, so how you can change dimensions to measures. So what happens to me sometimes if I plug in a new data source, sorry, especially with Excel, is that sometimes, especially ID columns, because they're numeric, they're going to be recognized as measures rather than dimensions. But there's an easy way of fixing that. So I have a quick example set up here. the customer information one. So if we look at it, you can see it has a couple of dimensions in here, as well as an ID column. And this one is actually my ID, so I want to use it as a dimension, but it was recognized as a measure. And an easy way of fixing that is, again, I simply right-click on it, and here I have the option to change that from a category, from a measure to a hierarchy. So I would just select the hierarchy from here, and now you see that it's part of the hierarchies of this table, and this is being saved. So you only need to set that up once, and everybody that's using this data connector profits and benefits from what you set up here. And then last but not least, I want to show you one of our data cube transforms that allow you to clean up and transform your data as you bring it in. I just want to show you one that I've set up as an example here. So this is just an example data cube. If we look at this, I'm quickly going to bring up the data preview so you can see what's the problem here. We have country information, and if I scroll down, you'll see that as this here comes from data input that's done by users, some of the users entered USA for the country of origin, and other people selected United States of America. So this is going to potentially bring me some issues when I want to aggregate this information on the dashboard later. So I want to take care of this. Another problem I have with my data is that for some continents here, they're in capital letters, where for others, they're not. So again, that's going to give me some problems with aggregation later on. On a city level, you notice that some of my cities here have special characters that come from the language of the people that have entered their city names. As I want to have it confirm, I want to remove those special characters and replace them with the more generic ones. And for the name column here, an issue, it's not that visible, but actually before and after those names, there's some white spaces that users added when they typed in their name. So I want to get rid of those as well. And then for credit card number, I have the full credit card number in my data set available. However, on the dashboard later on, I just want to show them the last 4 digits for security reasons. So how can we achieve all this? Very simple. We can all do this with our string transform. So if we have a quick look at what I've done here, I can bring this up. It allows you basically to add a string transformation for all the different dimensions that you have. So let's have a look at what we've done for country. So I can go ahead and I'm quickly going to bring this up. So here you can see our problem was that we had United States of America spelled out as well as the short version of it. So I used the replace function, specify the old value, and replaced it with the new one. For continent, I did something differently. So if you remember, the problem was that we had some in uppercase and some in lowercase. So we have 2 options that help you with that. We have the uppercase to uppercase option, and we have the 2 lowercase options. So either you want to have all of them in uppercase or you want to have all of them in lowercase. You just select it, and then it's transforming that for you. For the city name, we had this special character here. So what I did was I specified that, and then I said, okay, you're gonna replace that with the more generic version using our replace string function that we've already seen in the country dimension. And then for name, I used the trim function. So this one actually comes in 3 different variations. We have the trim start, and the trim end. So those 2 just remove the white spaces at the beginning or the end of the string, and this one takes care of both. As I had a problem with like leading and ending white spaces, I chose the trim function here as well. And then credit card number. For this one here, I use the write function. So what I do is I specify that I want to see the last 4 digits. So I'm going to say, give me the 4 last digits counting from the right. There is a couple of other functions you can use for that. We have the left function that just starts counting from the left. And we also have the substring function that allows you to cut something out from the middle part of the string. And now after we've done all this, I want to show you what kind of difference that makes. Let me quickly bring up a dashboard that shows the difference between what we had before and what we had after. So here is what we had before. You can see we have all kinds of different groupings. We have like 2 types of Europes here. We have 2 North Americas. We also have the issue that we have the United States of America and the USA here. And we have all of the credit card numbers, which is a security concern in our case. So let's see how we have this after we use the string manipulation. We have the 3 proper groupings for our continents. We were able to remove that special character, and you can see that for the credit card numbers. Now we only have the last 4 credit card numbers. So that's exactly what we were looking for. So this is how you can, again, use our string transform in the data cube to clean up your data and make sure that only the information you want the user to see is actually visible on the dashboard in the end. Okay, so that was data preparation. Let's move on to the analysis part. First of all, I want to show you how you can create your own tokens. And the reason why I think this is pretty cool and also very important is, let's assume you have a dashboard, you're a product manager or you're a region manager, and you're interested in certain product combination or certain research combinations. What you would have to do is you can use this filter and you go ahead and you can select all the different types of products that you're interested in. But if you have to make the same selection over and over, it will take you a lot of time. So a way you can speed up this process is that you make the selection once. So let's say I'm a product manager, I'm interested in mostly accessories and my bikes. I would submit this, and now I have the option here from the token menu to click on it and save that selection as a token. So I can basically create my own custom tokens and then use those instead of making the same selection over and over. First of all, I specify a caption. So as these are the products I'm responsible for, I'm going to call them Marina's products. And then here I have the option to either set this as a global token, a token for a specific tenant, or a token for a specific account. I have to say that I'm seeing those options here because I'm the administrator of this instance. If you're just a normal user, you only have the option to add this token to your account. So you won't be able to create, for example, tenant tokens. So I get those options because I'm an admin. So let's see what happens here. I can set this token to a specific account, and in my case, I want to set it to my account. So I'm going to go ahead and select my account here. I also have the option to change the filter value here in case whatever I've selected on the dashboard is not 100% what I want. And then after everything is the way I want it, I'm just going to submit this option here, and it will tell me that it saved Marina's product token. And now instead of making the selection, so I can go ahead and select all of them, I can now use the token. You'll see that once I click on the token menu, you now have this new option with Marina's products, and I can click on it and it will show me the values I've selected previous. And I think the greatest thing about this here is that the token I create is not just saved to the filter, it's actually saved to this specific hierarchy. So as we use the same hierarchy with a couple of other examples that I have, you'll see that the same token pops up at other places as well. So if you have multiple dashboards with the same type of hierarchy, you can reuse this token and you will see it coming up across different dashboards. Okay, so that was how you can create your own tokens. One thing I also want to show you is once you have created your own tokens, you can actually manage them. So if you're just a normal user and not an administrator, you can manage them from your own profile here. So if I click on my profile, and I scroll a bit down here, I actually see a tokens option. So if I click on it now, you see that this here is my Marina's product token. I could delete it from here, or I can go ahead and edit it. So if I'm not happy with the selection, I could change it from here. So if you create a couple of tokens, you can always manage them from your own profile page. Okay, next topic is how you can use dimensions for count and distinct counts. And the way I'm going to show this is quickly by creating a new metric set. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to create a new metric set here. Okay, so what I want to do is I have an Excel sheet that's again showing me the different customer information. So what I want to see is how many male and female customers do I have. So what I do first is I take the gender and I drag and drop it here onto my metric set. In the second step, I want to actually count the number of distinct email addresses that come for my female and male customers, because I know that those are unique. But you could do other types of counts. You could see how many female customers, how many different countries do they come from, how many different products are they purchasing, all those kinds of information. You can get them out of that. So what I'll do now is I'll take the email dimension and I drag and drop it all the way here on the left side into my measure section. And you'll notice that now, first of all, it's counting them as a measure, so it's creating a count for them. it's bringing that count here in on my metric set. And I have the option, if I click on this pencil icon here, I can decide that instead of showing this as a distinct count, I could switch to a count, or I can stay with distinct count. So those are the two different options of counts that you have available. And with those, you should be able to do, to accommodate a lot of counting use cases and things where you want to see, how many different types of products, how many different types of employees, departments, and so you have. Okay, so this is quickly to show you how you can use dimensions to count. The next thing is what-if analysis. So what I've done here is I set up a quick example, and I want to show you with that what the different types of what-if analysis are. So I prepared two different variations. There is more different options that you have, but I usually like to go with either one of them. The first option you see here on the left side is our correct value option. So what I have here is I have a simple table. We can see I have products, computer, phone, and server. They all have a price. They all have a prediction of how many units I'm going to sell. As a result, not as a result, but I also know the cost it takes to produce one of those products. And as a result, I have a function that calculates the profit for me. So what I can do now is I can take and go ahead and let's say, okay, I'm estimated before that we're going to sell 50 servers, and now I'm a little bit more positive. So I think we're going to sell 100 of them, and I want to see how that affects my profit. And the way I would do that is I simply right click, I open our context menu, and then you'll see that we have this option here to correct a value. So if I select this, it actually allows me to enter a new value for my unit sold prediction for the server. So I'm going to apply this, and you'll see that automatically now it updates the profit for this, it updates the numbers of units sold, and it also updated this other visualization here that's using the same metric set. And what I get on top of that is I get this little note here that I can hover over, and we'll see that I changed this value from 50 to 100 and when this was changed. And let's do this for another one. Let's say I realized that maybe computers can be produced cheaper, so I want to change my cost per unit to see how that affects my profit. So again, I'm going to right click, I'm going to correct the value, and let's set this to 400 instead. You'll also notice that I set up the table in a way that highlights what other cells are being updated so that I always know like what's being touched by my analysis here. So this is how you can do what-if analysis by correcting the value. Another option you have here is on the right side. This is what-if analysis by using formula parameters. So we have a similar setup. The price comes from my database. The units sold are also stored in my database. And then, the units sold come from my database, and the cost per unit. And then I take a formula for the price that takes into account my profit margin. So right now I have a 20% profit margin, so my price is actually 20% on top of the cost that I have, and then it calculates my profit based on all of those price, units sold, and cost per unit before that. So what I have here is I allow the user to go in and use this filter to quickly change the profit margin and then see how that changes the overall profit. And they can go ahead and play with it, see how it would work for a lower profit margin and how it works for a bigger one. And for this one here, I quickly also want to show you how I set this up. So I'm going to go to edit mode and show you that. Okay, so for the left one here, nothing special. I just created this table and I used the same metric set for this bar chart underneath. For this one here, there was a little bit more of a setup. So let's have a look at the data analysis panel. If I bring this up, you'll see again that cost per unit and the units sold come from my database, and that price and profit are actual formulas. And the formula we want to have a look at here is the price. So if I quickly bring this up, you'll notice that here it takes the cost per unit, and then it multiplies that margin with the cost per unit and adds it on top of the cost. So cost per unit, we already have this in our metric set, nothing special about that, but margin actually does not appear in my metric set. So this here is what we call a formula placeholder. All I need to do to add those placeholders, I simply need to enclose them into $ signs as well. So here I just typed in $ margin, $. Once you click on it, it will bring up a placeholder panel for you. You can specify the placeholder name, and you also have the option to set up a couple of properties. So let's have a quick look at those properties. First of all, I can set the parameter type. I can either change this from a single number to a Boolean to a date, time, or a string field. In our case, we want to keep this as a single number, and I could also specify a default value. So those are the options that you have here. And then what I've done with that, once I've created this formula, I've actually used a single number filter. And if we quickly have a look at how this is bound, so let me just right click, connect filters, you'll see that this filter is actually not bound to the measure behind the price. If I expand it, it's bound to the single number formula parameter or placeholder that we have set up. So this here is bound to that margin placeholder, and as the user changes the number filter, it actually updates the margin, and as a result updates the price, and then as a result updates the profit. So this is how you can use placeholders in formulas also to achieve a what-if analysis. Okay, that was the what-if analysis part. So now we've covered all of the analysis options I wanted to show you today. So let's move on to visualization. For this one here, before we get started, one of the things that we always talk about at work and we always kind of discuss is which one is better, Star Trek or Star Wars. So what we're going to do here is we're going to try something similar. I've already taken that poll with my colleagues at work, but I want to see what you guys think. So let me just launch another poll quickly. So please let us know, are you a Star Trek fan? Are you a Star Wars fan? You have to pick either one of them. And then I will show you later how we can visualize that in a good way in Dundas BI. So I'll give you a couple of seconds. I just want to tell you I'm a Star Trek fan, so I could really appreciate if you could, favor Star Trek a little bit. Let's see. I'll give you a couple of more seconds. Yeah, more Star Trek. Come on, guys. Okay, it seems everybody made their choice. Now let's have a look what the results are. I'm just quickly going to bring up a visualization here. So right now I just have the kind of values I hoped for. What we're going to do is I'm going to bring up the actual values behind that. One second. Okay, first of all, here are the results. So we have 55% Star Wars fans and 45% Star Trek fans. And I'll show you how you can also get like the same result in Dundas BI. So let me hide that poll real quick. Let's go back to my metric set designer. So this is what that was kind of the result I was hoping for. So let's fix this really quick. This is actually being fed by data input. So let's go to the data preview here. There's an option to modify the data. So we're going to say we have, what was it, Star Wars 55 and Star Trek 45. So it looks a little bit different now. And the reason why we've done all of that is not to figure out which one is better, because it's Star Trek for sure, but also to show you how you can use images for the fill-of visualizations. And that doesn't only work with pie charts, it also works with all types of other charts like bar charts. You can use images for state indicators, you can use images for bullet graphs for the markers and so on. So this just covers one of the use cases, but you can do many more cool things with it. And the way I set this up here is, let's have a quick look at the properties. So I set it up on the data point palette. So if I expand it, you'll notice that I have two different images as the data point palette, one being my Star Trek theme and then one being my Star Wars theme here. And if we have a quick look, all I've really done is under the fill, I specify that I want to use an image here, and then I selected the resource. So those are the images that you basically already uploaded. So if I would select an image here, it would give me the different options of images that I have available on my instance. And let's walk through how that basically works from the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a new point of the palette here. So I'm going to go ahead, create a new point style. And if I click inside here, you'll notice that it gives me this expander icon. I can expand this, and then instead of just using a brush, I can go ahead, instead of using a solid brush, I go ahead and use an image brush instead. So it brings up the source image option here, and then I can select an image. And again, I have all the options of the images that I already have available. If you don't have the image you're looking for, then quickly upload it and you can use it. You also have the option to decide whether it's going to cover all of the area or whether it's going to be contained. And you have the option to either repeat or to not repeat. In my case, I repeated them, so I picked an image that kind of looks good even though it's being repeated. But you could also go with another option here. And I wanted to show you also a couple of more kind of examples of what you can do with it. So we have another sample on our website. Here, this is showing you a quick slider where they use a horse as the slider here instead of just a simple rectangle or a triangle, what we usually have. So you can also use images for those types of controls. And this here is another example of how you can use your images as state indicators. So this one here is actually not one of the default settings. This is an image that you can upload and use for the state indicator, and you can do pretty cool things with it. So there's an example here where I can actually make it flash. So we used a red image for that, and then a beige image, and we kind of alternate between them. And these are all things you can set up simply using the UI. Okay, that was how you can use images as fill. The next thing we're going to talk about is how you can customize tables in a way by revisualizing some of those columns. So let's have a look at what that looks like. When I created this table initially, all I had here was my sales year to date, and I had my sales last year, both just as text or the numbers in here. If you want to give your users the actual values, but you also want them to be able to see the patterns behind the data and quickly analyze if something is going well or not, you can also revisualize those either to a bar, to a bullet graph, to a state indicator. There's a couple of more options, so let's have a look what the options are. If I want to revisualize a column, I simply click on it. And then under revisualize here at the top, it already knows that I'm talking about a table column here, so it gives me the different options. So you can see by default it's a text. I also can set this to an image column. I can use a hyperlink for that if I want the user to be able to click on the cell and then it sends them to a different website. For example, here's the state indicator we've used, bullet graph, data bar, and we also have the checkbox column. Now, if I want to change that, let's go ahead and change this to a bullet graph. What happens is it brings up this bullet graph by default. I can click on the on the column, and you'll notice that here on the left side, it opens the data analysis panel and kind of zooms it into that specific column. And on the right side, if I go ahead, open the properties and click on it again, it will also zoom into this bullet graph, and it will allow me to start customizing this bullet graph as if it was a separate bullet graph on the dashboard. And now let's have a look at what happened here. So it displays the sales year to date, and it also uses by default the state I've set up for my state indicator. And what I've done here on the other one is I used my sales last year as kind of a target. So I can quickly see whether my sales right now was exceeding the last year or is it still a little bit behind. So let's do the same thing here. So as we already have our analysis panel popped up, you'll see that right now it only has the sales year to date. So we can quickly go ahead, click to add, and then select the sales from last year as well. And you'll see that now it updates the column here to also show those sales of last year as a target. And I could now go ahead and customize this bullet graph. I can change the colors. I can change the way it's styled. I can add images as we just learned before to make sure that even though it's within a table, I can still get the styling that I want with it. Okay, that was how you can customize your table and how you can revisualize specific columns. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is something that just takes a couple of seconds to set up, but it can improve your dashboard a lot. So let's have a look what that is. You notice that this dashboard here has 3 visualizations. They all show different level of my hierarchy, and they all show different types of measures. They actually have exactly the same size. So all of those 3 different charts here have the same height, but you'll notice that they look all over the place because the bottom axis here is not aligned. So the way you can fix this and make sure that your visualizations are always nicely aligned and you get a clean and a nice looking dashboard is, let's have a look. I go to edit mode. And now I just select any of the visualizations. I click on it and you'll see at the top toolbar there's this option to align axes. Once I click on it, it opens this little panel here and it allows me to specify with what other charts I want to align this specific chart with. So as I want to align it with both of them, I simply check them, and now you see that we already get a cleaner feel. If I go to view mode right now, all of them are aligned, and I can go ahead and change the filter value to anything I want, and it's still going to show me the axes aligned. And if you remember, I told you that you're going to see Marina's product throughout the whole webinar. So here again, this is a totally different dashboard, totally different filter. I'll still be able to select Marina's products from here. So let's go to all, and then I'm going to go back to my token menu and select Marina's products. The next thing I think is also very helpful is the parameter update button. Use cases where I usually suggest that to users is if you have a dashboard that initially takes a little bit of time to load, and the kind of user experience you have envisioned is that your user goes ahead, they select a couple of filter values to get exactly the selection that they need, and then look at the dashboard. The parameter update button can help you to remove the frustration users might have with the dashboard. And I'll show you quickly why. So let's have a look at the sample dashboard I've set up. So let's assume that this here took quite some time to load. I have a couple of filters I want the user to be able to set. What I can do now is I can make my selection. I can change the start date, do whatever I want. You'll notice that even though I'm changing those filters here, nothing happens with the visualization underneath it. The reason for that is that I use an update button that basically makes or waits for the user to make their selection. Once they have the selection they want to see, they can click on this button here, and then it will start filtering based on that. So instead of refreshing the data every time they select something from a filter, you can actually bind all of those filters together and give them kind of a filter button like this one here. And I want to quickly show you how you can set that up. So let me go to edit mode and let me quickly remove this button here so we can start from scratch. The place where you find this button, it's pretty simple. You go ahead, you go to your filters, and you'll notice on the very right side you have this update button. So you would click on it, and then it gives you this user interface where you can select what filters you want to trigger with this button. So as we only have product and date filter here, I'm going to select both of them. I'm going to take it. And then let's move it up here. And that's all you need to do. And now we get the same results. So if I go in view mode, I can go and change the products here again. We have Marina's products. I can make selection. Nothing will happen unless I start triggering the update button. Okay, that's how you can use the update button to help users to make the selection first before you refresh the data. The next thing here is what many users have asked me before, and what allows you to customize and personalize the dashboard experience for your users. It's to display session information. And a quick example of how I've done this is here. I have this little label here that says Welcome Marina. And depending on the user that logs onto this dashboard, they will see their own name standing here instead of mine. And an easy way of how you can do that is I'm quickly going to go to edit mode to show you that. So all I did, I added a label, I did my styling, I just typed in a generic text, it doesn't really matter. The only thing that really matters is when you go to the properties, you'll see that it has a script name. So you need to be sure that you know what the script name here is. So in our case, that's current user label. And now what I have done is I added a one-liner code to the ready event of the dashboard. So if we have a quick look at what that is doing, let's have a look at the script. And all it does really, it just references the label. So this is our script name for the label, and then it uses the label text property. Now for this property, now it sets it to the string welcome, and then it adds the account display name of the current session. So the current session has a couple of information like the default time zone of the user, custom attributes, the display name, the culture. So you can get all of those information from the current session. In our case, I just took the name and then I added it to the string to the label to make, to give this personal touch to a dashboard when the user logs on. Okay, so that about the visualization part of it. Now let's move on to the administration. So this here is something that I think is pretty cool. Is actually the ability to change the default theme. So you'll notice that while I've created a couple of visualizations and metric sets, every time I do that, it uses our Dundas BI default theme. If you don't like this theme, if you think you have a better one, or if you have one that fits your company colors better, you can actually use that default theme instead of our Dundas BI theme automatically. So all you need to do to set that up, again, I'm just going to go to our Explorer panel here, and I look at the different themes I have available. So for this webinar, I'm just going to use a default theme that already comes out of the box, but in your case, you can use your own themes that you have created. So you can get as creative as possible. Now for here, I'm going to use the Earth theme. What I need is the ID of this theme. So I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to go to the properties, and then you'll see that I can get the ID from here. So I'm just going to copy paste this for now. After that, I'll move over to the administration. So I'm going to go here to my administration panel, and I'm going to go to setup, and from there to the configuration. Once I'm there, I can either scroll down and find the property from there, or I can go ahead and just search for theme. And you'll notice that this is the property that we're looking for, the default theme ID. And now we're just going to overwrite that. So I'm going to click on the pencil icon. I can edit the value, and I'm just copy pasting in the ID that we took from our Earth default theme. So this is where the ID of your own theme would go. And then we're going to submit this. And it tells us that the default theme ID has been updated. So now let's have a look what happened. Let's go quickly and create a new metric set. So I'm going to create a new one. And we're going to just start dragging and dropping a couple of dimensions. Let's go to AdventureWorks, a little bit down here. And let's take the sales territory. So I'm going to do a quick ad hoc analysis. I'm going to take maybe the group information. I'm going to take the name information and maybe a couple of measures. Let's go ahead with sales year to date. And let's also add sales last year. So you notice that this looks a lot different than what we've seen before. So now it uses the Earth default style for the tables, but I also can revisualize, and it's going to use that from now on. So let's say I'm going to go revisualize, and instead of showing this as a table, I'm going to see this as a bar chart. So notice how this is way different than what we had before. And let's do this again. Let's revisualize and see maybe what the point charts look like. So if you want to give the user the idea that this is your own application, or if you want to customize it more towards your organization, I would highly suggest that you create your own theme and then use that theme as a default. So when the user does their own ad hoc analysis, they already get this theme by default. So it's also going to save them time from the point where they do the ad hoc analysis until they actually place it on a dashboard and start with the styling of that. Okay, and then last but not least, I'm going to talk about the splash screen. So the splash screen is a new feature that we have. It kind of comes up before you open a dashboard or before you open a scorecard and a report. What it looks like is I'm going to refresh this page, but you have to be quick. So you'll see the splash screen comes up there for a couple of seconds because this dashboard is very quick when it loads. You can actually customize the splash screen, and this just takes a couple of CSS overrides. So the way I've done it for a different instance, I'm going to show you in a second what the result looks like, is I can. So this here is on my CSS override page for my instance, and that means that I need to write this once. I place it on my CSS override file, and it works for the whole application. So throughout the whole application, you're going to see your splash screen now instead of the Dundas BI splash screen. And it just took a couple of CSS attributes. So first of all, I'm going to hide the actual SVG splash screen image that we have here at Dundas BI. So I'm just setting that display here to none. And then instead of showing this SVG image, I say I want to take the background image, I want to set it to my image, so I call this one loading GIF. It's actually a GIF, so it's not just a static image. And then you can set the background size, whether it should be repeated or not, and the position of it. And the result of what you get in the end is, let me go ahead, and I actually have this set up here. So this is a different instance. I'm going to log on to show you the splash screen for that. So this here is using a different splash screen. I'm just going to refresh the page so you can see it again. So you can get as creative as you want with those. You can add GIFs there. You can add static images. You can add the logo of your organization there. It doesn't have to be the Dundas BI splash screen. You can add whatever you want to have there. Okay, that was the last of the features I wanted to show you. Now, before we come to the question part of the webinar, I have just quickly one more slide I wanted to show you. Okay, so now that you've seen all those cool things you can do with Dundas BI, what's next? If you're already using Dundas BI, that's great. If you have any questions about anything I've set up here, feel free to either reach out to any of the solution architects or to reach out to support. We'll be happy to share the details, share exactly how it's done, give you step-by-step instructions. If you're not using Dundas BI yet, or you're doing your evaluation at the moment, again, feel free to reach out to support as well. We also have a free online trial that you can use to play around with it, and we offer a free full product download that you can set up on your end, and you can get started with your evaluation and try all of those different features that you've seen today. So this is what's next. Now, after you've seen all of those features, I'm sure there's going to be a couple of questions. So I'm going to take some of the questions you've asked, and then we'll go over them and I'll answer as many of them as possible. Okay, so the first question comes from Sandra. So Sandra, first, thanks for joining. So she said that she asked if there could be more webinars in this series, and that's actually our plan. So we're going to have more fun things to do with Dundas BI coming along. So just, we're going to send out emails once we have a third part. You can also check our website where we usually announce them, and we'll be happy to do another webinar following the series. Also, Sandra, if you like this webinar, I actually have a colleague doing another webinar in September. There we're going to talk about the best practice of dashboard building. So what we had here was fun things to do, but then my colleague Danny is also going to talk about how you can do fun things also following best practice to get those good looking dashboards. So that would be a good option for you as well. Okay, so another question was submitted by Gerardo. So he asked, can you do counts by meeting certain conditions? For example, he wants to count donations by certain ranges. So count everything from 1 to 99, from 100 to 999, and so on. So a way you could do this is actually in our data cube. You can create a calculated element there with a condition where you say if the value is between 199, assign it to a certain category. If it's between 100 and 999, assign it to another category, and then you can do your count based on those. So that would be an option. Something else you might want to have a look at is our histogram. That actually also allows you to do counts based on certain buckets. So with this one, you don't have the option to kind of decide the bucket size yourself. So if you want to have something more customized, I would recommend a calculated element, but the histogram does something similar on a visualization level. So you might want to check that one out as well. Okay, so we have another question from Sandra. So she's asking if it's possible to get the script for the splash screen. So yeah, sure, we are happy to share all of the scripts with you. So I'm going to send you an email after the webinar, giving you a little bit more details and the script as well. In general, if you ever want to do something and it has to be done through our open APIs, you can always contact support. They'll be happy to supply those scripts that they have on their end, or they'd be happy to help you write those scripts together with you. So that's always an option. But Sandra, I'm going to send you the script for the splash screen for sure. We also have a question from Michelle. So she says, why I'm not able to edit a data point in my table. So I'm assuming this is about the what if analysis correction part that I've showed you earlier. This is actually tied to a permission. So if you don't have the permission to edit the data point and to override it, you won't be able to do that. So if you want to do it and you don't have those permissions yet, you can contact your administrator and double check there to make sure that you have the right permissions. So this is also an option for you as the administrators. If you want users to be able to do that type of what if analysis, to be able to override those values, you can give them the permissions. However, if you want to tie it up and not allow them to do that, you can just as easily deny them the permission to do so. Okay, there was also a question from Pooja. So the question was, how do we find JavaScripts that can be reused in our dashboard? So you have a couple of options here. If you don't want to, copy paste the same script to, even the same dashboards in different elements or across different dashboards, you have two ways of staying organized while writing that script. The first option you have is you can use our JavaScript override file, which is actually part of your instance. So you can go ahead and add all your functions there, and then you just call them from the dashboard. So instead of scripting the same function over and over again, you can add that once to your own kind of JavaScript library on the JavaScript override file and then call that from the dashboard. Another option that you have is you can write the functions that you have once in the loading event of the dashboard, and then you can reference those functions you have added to the loading event, and you can reference that within the same elements of the same dashboard. So if you want to share them just within a dashboard, you can do that on the loading event of the dashboard. If you want to share it across the whole instance, I would recommend to put it on the JavaScript override file of the instance and then reference it from there. Okay, so he's asking now, do you have some samples you can refer? Do you mean the samples, like the different types of things you can do with script? Okay, yeah, so we have actually a script library on our support website. So if you want, I can send you an email pointing you towards there. Our script library has many different examples of how you can use our open APIs, to customize the user experience. So I'll send you the link, and then you can click around, play with the different options that we have there. And it always has like an interactive example, and then in addition to that, shows you exactly the script that was used for that. And then if you have more customized or you need some more customized information to your specific use cases, then you would contact support, and then they're going to help you with that. But let me send you the script library link so you can see what's there already. Okay, so William is asking if the demo will be made available to download later. And yes, so each and one of you will get an email with the video of today's webinar, and they're also always accessible through our website. So if you like this webinar and you haven't seen the first part, you can access that from our website. Or if you're curious about other types of webinars that we've done in the past, or what comes up next, visit our website and you can see all of the other ones there. But you're gonna get an email with this one here sent to you. Okay, then thanks for your time. I had a lot of fun showing you the different cool features of Dundas BI. We're gonna keep, showing you different things you can do. There's gonna be a third part that's gonna come up again in September. One of my colleagues is gonna do a webinar on best practice for dashboards. So make sure that you check that one out as well. And then again, just thanks for joining. I hope you had a great time, and I'll see you in another webinar.